Well, hello. Welcome to Recruitability's Nothing Sacred podcast. I'm your host, Nat Elias, here with my co-host, Nick Shank. Nick, how's it going?
Good. This is an exciting time. First time filming Nothing Sacred podcast.
That's right. Right. And first time after a little break in summer.
Yeah. I'm excited about our guest here, Nate Little. Appreciate you coming to the studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Nate and I go way back. We're excited to have you on the show. Nate and I have known each other for about 10 years. He has spent more than 20 years as a technologist, product leader, executive at companies like Trilogy, Indeed, and School Admin, which he co-founded. And as CEO grew it over the last 12 years with a focus on building a company that was both high-performing and a really great place to work. After 3 successful exits to private equity and strategic acquirers, he's now independent, advising companies looking to solve product, growth, and operational challenges. Nate grew up in Texas and has a lot of children.
I do.
So we can start there. Tell us about your kids.
I have 4 of them. It feels like a lot more than that. We have 4. Their ages 8, 11, 13, and 14. So our summer was spent hanging with the kids. It was a really great
What'd
summer.
you do? Where'd you guys go?
So we went to Europe. We had an exchange student who stayed with us about a year and a half ago, something like that. And we were going to go visit her last summer and just couldn't make it work because of COVID, travel, everything else. So we made it this summer. Went to visit her. She's in the Netherlands.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
did that. I went on a mountain biking trip with a couple buddies to Colorado. And then my wife and I got away for a rare break to Maine, which is really
cool.
nice. Yeah.
Which part?
We were in Kittery,
Okay.
so right by Portsmouth, and then we would just go into Portsmouth for breakfast, and then right up the coast to York or Algonquin or something like that. So we were in the southern part.
That sounds relaxing.
It was super
That's
relaxing.
great. The Northeast is nothing beats it in the summertime.
Ah, it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then we got home. Our kids came back from camp, and it was just chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I went to New Jersey for a
New
family
Jersey.
reunion, visited family in Boston area, and then went back to Minnesota for a little break because that's where I grew up. Got family there. New Jersey actually surprised me. The beaches there. First of all, you have to pay to get to the beach in New Jersey, which surprised me. And then the water was beautiful. And maybe I'm naive, but I thought that the water would be kind of dirty, like the runoff from Manhattan and Staten Island.
And all the dead bodies. I've seen Sopranos.
Yeah, but it was not like that. It was really nice. So it was a good summer.
That's great. Well, let's dive into it. I mean, we're excited. We've got some time to spend with Nate here. Nothing sacred. We started this podcast. We talk a lot about work, what it is, what it looks like, where it's going. A lot of conversations that were really unique during COVID. And now we're starting to see some of these companies just really transition into, putting a stake in the ground, what they're going to be. And so much of that is really about culture, right? What kind of culture are they establishing going forward in this environment, which has changed? I think we see this, and I'd love your thoughts on it, Nate, but we see people that they want to work differently now, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of culture at companies. So, I know the School Admin story, and I certainly want to hear your take on it, Nate, but culture was big. Culture was big to you. So tell us a little bit about how you set the culture of School Admin.
Yeah, it's such a broad question because it's something we developed over years and years
Right.
and years. It's I view culture as, well, first off, when I say culture, I mean how we work together. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not all the perks and that's kind of a part of it, but it's a very small part. It's really just how we work together every day.
Yeah.
What's it like when you come in and do your job that day, and what's it like to be with the people you're around, and how do you make decisions, and that's all really the culture. And so the way I thought about it, because I had a product background, is I thought of it like, well, this company is my product. And my job, I'm CEO, but really I'm also kind of the chief culture officer. So my job is to make this product as good as I can.
Sure.
And, it's kind of that whole work on the business, not work in the business is my way of sort of making myself step back from the company, out of the day to day, and just think about how can I make this thing better, this product, that school admin. And doing that, it did a few things. First off, it had that separation, but then it also
Sure.
made me think about, all right, everybody thinks about our customers. That's been a big thing. A lot of companies consider that, but are we also thinking about the users as our employees? Those are also the users of this product. Our investors are also the users of this product. So it just kind of put me in the mindset of always just trying to learn, gather feedback, ask our users, our employees, our customers, how are we doing, right? What are we doing a great job of? What are we not? And just learning as much as I can, put myself in their shoes as much as I could. And then that informs the changes you make, like that actually defines the culture, right? So it tells you where you need to focus.
Yeah.
And so, I approached it kind of like managing a product and just focused on building a system and just making sure that we had rhythms and accountability that kept us improving it every single quarter.
It's a great way of looking at it. Did you do anything different with getting the culture ingrained and adopted when COVID happened? We all went virtual.
Yeah, I think one of my wake-up calls was just realizing we weren't ready for it because we were an in-person office, right? And we didn't do enough of the communication, letting people know what's going on in the business. We weren't proactive enough about that, and that's one of the pieces of feedback I got when I did my quarterly survey, because we'd always do a survey. It was anonymous, so people hopefully feel comfortable. And then I'd present the results of the survey to the company and say, all right, here's what we're doing a great job of. Here's what we're maybe not doing a great job of, and here's what I'm going to do and what the leadership team is going to do so that we can get better at this. And then we're going to report back in a quarter. And I remember that first one, it was just communicate more,
Yeah.
And because we were just sort of dependent on stuff casually, communication kind of just casually happens when you're all in the office together. But when you're not, you have to plan it. You have to be systematic about it. You have to over communicate. And so that was kind of my first, sort of aha learning. And so we got a lot better at that, a few months later, but.
It's one of the best lessons in leadership I've ever gotten was over communicate.
Yeah.
You can't communicate enough to a team. And even when you think you're over communicating, you're probably not communicating enough.
Yep.
I think, and that's interesting because when companies went to virtual, they had to over communicate now.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. Something else interesting you said is culture is not a place you go to. I had a mentor tell me there's a difference between culture and environment, and
Yeah.
most companies don't get that.
Yeah.
Right? They people ask during an interview, "What's your culture like?" And you start saying, "We've got ping pong tables. We bring lunch every day. We've got a bar," and that's not really culture. And people had to really look themselves in the mirror and figure that out when COVID happened, because you can't use that anymore.
Yeah.
You can't use
Yeah.
environment as the culture excuse anymore.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but that's definitely true. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
people really figured out what their culture was, or if they even had one
Yeah.
when we went virtual.
Yeah.
So
Somebody told me once that culture is defined by who you hire, who you fire, and who you promote. Like nothing signals culture more than those three things because people look at all those things. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's just, that's I think an indicator of what you really value at the end of the day, because you're putting your money where your mouth is,
Yep.
right? Those people decisions are tough.
Yeah.
And so it shows you where your sort of principles are and where you draw the line, or what's really important and what
Yep.
do you value. I would build on that and say I think it's also then, how do you communicate? What are the practices around that? How do you teach people like healthy communication? How do you make decisions?
Yep.
How do you run meetings? Right. That's also, so I would layer on kind of the operations on top of that, but I think that's absolutely right. That it's the people and the decisions you make around that are the foundation.
So let's talk about people for a second. You started School Admin. I imagine it was you and one co-founder. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And when it sold, you had 54 employees. Is that right?
Yeah, it was right around there.
Okay. What would you say the top lessons you learned about managing people were, like, and where you maybe improved or changed the most during that trajectory?
Yeah, I have a lot of them. It's hard to pick one, but I'd say one was, okay, so this was actually a growth area for me as a leader. One thing that I learned way too late that I wish I would have learned earlier is, I kind of always had this philosophy. I know you and I have talked about this, Nad, of like, I want to be the hardest worker in the entire office, right? I'm just going to do whatever it takes, and I'm going to set an example, like leadership by example kind of thing. Not realize, and I'm also kind of a perfectionist, especially, like let's craft this, product just this way. We want it to be great, we want to make the company great. So I always had my hands in everything.
Yeah.
And it was actually a detriment at the end of the day. I think me setting a high bar was a good thing, but, I just got too involved in too many things myself and took on too many things. And that was, in hindsight, that was a big bottleneck for the company, right? And because I wasn't entrusting others, it took me a long time. It's probably about year 6 or maybe even, somewhere around there before I really started getting good at, delegating and trusting others. But it was also depriving us of like a great way of engaging employees. Because if I were to do that sooner and show people, no, I trust you. In fact, I'm gonna hold you accountable, and I'm gonna support you and coach you in taking on this thing that I otherwise would do.
Yeah.
That's autonomous. It's rewarding, right?
Yep.
It'd be rewarding for them. So I took way too long to figure that lesson out.
Was there a breaking point where you learned that lesson?
Yeah, it was 2014 into 2015. We had our toughest year we ever had. We had taken on too much growth. We were trying to do too many things at once because we sold software to schools. So we were in private schools, and we also were going after charter schools. And they were just too different that we were spreading ourselves too thin. I hadn't solved some of these cultural things, like delegation, like I was just talking about, it was an issue. Like we just weren't very good at that yet. And we got to a point where, our customer sat was bad. Our employee satisfaction was taking a big hit. I had made a couple bad hires, that were affecting the rest of the company. And it was a wake-up call. That's when that was after I joined EO, but I spent a lot of time, it's Entrepreneurs Organization, which is my, group of people that I meet with who also run businesses, and we share ideas. And I brought that to them, was like, I got to figure this out, I got to figure out how to get better at this whole leadership thing. So yeah, there was definitely a wake-up call for me there.
And there's a real power in that message around your level of awareness. I think leaders tend to, they know what they're good at, but they tend to think they know what they're not good at as well, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And in your case, you admitted just now that you tended to overwork and take on too much. And, you have to have a level of awareness to know that, hey, this is the type of person that I am.
Yeah.
And I need to do this now, right? The flip side can be said for somebody that maybe is just really good at delegating all the time and doesn't want to take anything on, right? That person can have a level of awareness to know that, hey, maybe I should take some of this on. Let me own this, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But the days of leading by example, I think I've talked about this on this podcast before, the first one in, last one out, people don't look at you with respect anymore. Now they're like, that guy's just not efficient at his job.
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with him?
He spends a lot of hours in the office. Something's wrong with that guy.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
Because we used to sit around with my first boss. I would sit around and just wait for him to leave because I knew that would set an example. It's not like I was really doing any more work. Like I was done with the work for the day, but I would sit at my desk and I wouldn't leave until he left because that's how I knew that was the example that would show that I'm working.
Yeah, and people didn't work from home when I started my career.
Yeah.
It was like you left your computer at work. It wasn't until several years in my career when I had a laptop I could bring home from work. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we talk about this a lot in the podcast, it's just how it's changed, right? And there has to be a level of awareness again from companies as well as from employees that things have changed and everybody's just figuring it out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We've got a hybrid work environment now. We're Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in the office, Thursday, Friday. We're remote, and it's working. Everybody understands it. We put our stake in the ground. We say, hey, this is what our environment's going to be like. Notice I didn't say culture. Mm-hmm. Our environment is now 3 days in, 2 days off. And when we're together, we have fun. There's a lot of collaboration. And then when we're not, my hope is there's more focus.
Yeah.
Right. That they're doing the thing and they know what they need to be doing.
Well, I would think, do all the meetings just get crammed into Monday,
That's
Tuesday,
been the
Wednesday?
problem.
Yeah.
Nobody, I mean, look, everybody's zoomed out and teamed out. Nobody wants to have virtual meetings if they don't have to. So I think what we're seeing is, our staff meetings, our sales and marketing meetings, all of our meetings tend to happen when we're together. And then there's nothing from a meeting standpoint except for like a huddle or whatever, right? In the morning on Thursday, Friday.
So
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday is pretty clean to just get work
I mean, it's
done
like
for the most part.
basically we have a 4-day weekend now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you get your work done,
3-day work week, 4-day weekend.
That's innovative,
That's
Nat.
that's the recruitability way.
Cutting edge.
Nate, you alluded to hiring mistakes. What are those mistakes that you made hiring that you would never repeat again?
Yeah. So one is, it's funny. The thing about hiring is the mistakes, they show up in different ways, and like the same mistake can show up in all these different ways. I remember we did a retrospective after some hires, and we were like, what's working, what's not, what mistakes did we make? We did this whole kind of learning thing. And I remember thinking at the time, like, I even said it actually, it's like, man, I feel like we have made every single mistake you could possibly make. Turns out there's like, no, they keep coming. Like you keep finding new ones. But and it's typically around, I think the biggest mistakes I've made are typically around either, I mean, sometimes it's, on the front end of the funnel, like on the recruiting side, sometimes it's like you didn't communicate who you are as a company and sell the candidate and get them excited about coming. But most of the time it's been about just not doing a good job of evaluating.
Yeah.
And not being disciplined, like it shows up a lot of different ways. I've done this first one where you're just so desperate to get somebody in and help out that you see red flags and you kind of overlook them,
Yeah.
or everybody's super busy. And so you kind of skip the process a little bit, or you don't do the debrief meeting at the end, where you really dig into whether or not this is going to be the right hire. And that's cost me in big ways. I've had a couple examples where, bring a very senior person in, and who may not be a cultural fit, and because they're a leader in the company, right? And maybe they're great people. It's just they just approach the world differently than we do. That starts to seed throughout the rest of the company, and they have an outsized impact of sort of taking things in a different direction that you want. I think that's some of the most costly ones are the ones that, where they leave an influence on a lot of others, and then you got to really focus and sort of course correct.
Yeah.
Did you always, you said something interesting there about debrief. Do you always debrief after a meeting, interview, sales presentation? Is that sort of a habit that you all adopted at School Admin? Yeah,
we wouldn't do it always, but yeah, we really tried to do. So I'm going to actually separate these two. We called it the debrief meeting, which is the actual, at the end of the interview process, when you make the decision of, are we going to hire this person or not, right? That's where we all get together. Then afterwards, we do retrospectives periodically, maybe once a quarter or something like that, to say, how are we doing? What can we learn? So yeah, we tried to embed that in everything we did, like any major function. We try to build in the lessons learned, routines and rituals in there. But yeah, no, as part of hiring, what I'm calling the debrief meeting, which is that where all the people who did their interviews get together and discuss the candidate, that thing is maybe the most important step of the process. And so we spent a lot of time working on that. There's actually, Amazon has a great model for doing a debrief meeting.
Really?
If you look at it, I don't think they've ever published it, but I've heard about it, and I've kind of gone, you can go find it like on Quora or on the internet. You can go find descriptions of how they do it, but it's the whole thought process behind it is everybody who interviewed this candidate, they have a very narrow view into this person. And are they a good hire? Everybody's going to have an opinion, but they have a limited data set. Like they don't know a whole lot about this person. They spent 45 minutes with them.
Yeah.
So the whole idea behind their debrief meeting is your job in this, first you're going to vote on should we hire this person at the beginning, but then your job is to learn as much as you can from all the other people in the room, right? What they saw about this person. So you go from this very narrow view into having a much broader understanding of who this person is, and are they going to be a great fit for the company, and are we going to be a good fit for them? And you can just make a much more informed decision. And then they have this person called the bar raiser, whose whole job is to run this meeting. So you've heard about this before? Yeah, the whole job is just to make sure we're elevating our bar. And the hiring manager and the bar raiser have to approve the hire.
Okay.
So just to help you avoid the whole, I'll kind of overlook some of these things because I
Yeah.
really want to get this person in kind of thing. But yeah, that for us was maybe the most important part of the process.
I just got back from a conference in Miami, and the keynote speaker was a guy by the name of Shark. He was that was his call sign. He was a Top Gun commander, and he wrote a book, and I'm going to draw a blank on it. I think it's called Waiting to Debrief. The whole book, there's debrief in the book, but the whole book is focused on, accountability as a definition means absolute ownership, and the importance of debrief in the workplace after an interview, after a sales presentation, after a meeting. He said the most important part of his time in the Navy was the debrief. After every mission, every practice flight, they weren't allowed to go home until the debrief. The debrief had to happen right after the mission, and that's where they learned from their mistakes, what went right, what went wrong, and they documented it and went forward. And so he wrote this book, and now he goes around speaking. There's two guys, one's Shark, one's Cujo, and yeah, it's amazing. They still go by their call signs. I mean, he's in his mid to late 40s now, still goes by his call sign, and but it's a great book, and it was a real powerful keynote.
Yep. When I was at the Houston Texans, they called that the after action review.
Yes.
Yeah.
They pulled it from
Yes,
the
that's
Army.
it. Yep.
But,
Army calls it after action review. You're right. Yeah.
Yep.
He talked about that. The Q&A with this dude, by the way, afterwards, it was a real powerful message, and there was a bunch of business owners in the room. Every single question was about Top Gun.
Yeah. I still haven't seen the sequel.
I told him, I said, does this happen a lot? He goes, all the time.
Every time.
Yeah.
So what's better, one or two?
How realistic
The
was
second
it?
one's still in the theaters. I
Do
got
you
to
play
go
volleyball?
see it. Do you play volleyball? Classic scene there.
That's right.
So let's talk about school admin just a little bit more. You obviously had, was it 1, 2, how many funding rounds did you have?
We had our funding was all private through my business partner Jack
Okay.
Long, amazing human being, wonderful partner. I lucked out, right? He's great, and he provided most of the upfront capital for it, and was more of a passive manager. So he was involved on the board and advisor, but
Yep.
not involved in the day to day. So that's how we approached funding. Now, once it came time, Jack was ready to move on and just focused on philanthropic causes. In 2018 is when we began the process. And so we ran a full process, hired an investment banker, all the way down from hundreds of, teasers sent out, all the way down to the LOIs, IOIs, LOIs, management presentations, and then completed the deal in February of 2019.
Okay.
And that's when we bought, that Jack was bought out. So we brought in a private equity investor. They put in some growth capital that we then, put to work. That was the first one. The second one, their name's Quad Partners.
Okay.
That was the investor. They sold their majority stake, and I sold some of mine. But this was in March of 21 of last year.
Okay.
We sold to a company in our space called Final Sight. And then there was a third one where in December of last year, the private equity company that owned them sold them. So it's,
Okay.
so I've been through three of these events.
When you sell a company, you've done it a few times. Is there any part of you, because you put your heart, soul, and effort into these companies, where you have seller's remorse, where you're feeling like it's just, it was such a huge part of your life and now it's not? How's that feel?
Yeah, it was weird. Surprisingly, I didn't have, the seller's remorse.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of years preparing for
it.
this, both preparing the company, which, we could talk more about that if you guys are interested, but like a lot of time preparing the company, but then also trying to make sure that, I cultivated relationships with people in our space. So I knew the CEOs and or leaders of the different companies that might be, people that we might want to sell to. And, through that made sure, I don't know. I felt like once it was done, when you sell your company, things are going to be different no matter what, right?
Yeah.
There's no two companies are the same, right? So stuff's going to change. You'll have new bosses, new ways of doing things. But I felt like I had done my due diligence.
Yep.
And really picked the best place we could have landed, in our market. And so I felt good about it, you know?
Yeah. Did someone give you a playbook? I'm like, hey, if you want to sell your company, this is the process over the like preceding 2 to 3 years that you need to follow to best position your company for an exit?
Yeah, there's a book out there that I think for somebody who's first starting to think about this.
Yep.
There's a book out there called Built to Sell. I think it's Warlow is the name of the author.
Okay.
But it's a short, easy read. I mean, it starts with the fundamentals. So, you know, I think it's a great starting point to read about all of the things. And it's generic, so it's across all industries, right? But it talks about the things to be thinking about, you know, whether it's getting your books in order, having the right metrics. What are those key metrics that acquirers are going to care about in your space? Revenue streams, trying to diversify revenue streams or have maybe more recurring revenue streams to balance out, you know, project-based revenue, things like that. So it's a great starting point. I also so I read that book. I also talked to investment bankers.
Yep.
And what's great about if you're of big enough size where they're interested in you as a potential customer, investment bankers love to talk. They love to meet people, right?
Yeah.
And because you may hire them, and you may hire them to run your process when you do sell. And that's a great place to go to learn if it's available to you, because they know. I mean, that's what they do all day long.
They know what
sell.
metrics that buyers are going to care about,
Yep.
all that stuff.
And they could look at your business. You could sit down with somebody and say, "Hey, here's how we do things. Here's, you know, summary," and they can say, "Okay, here are the things I would invest in now," right? So that you're in a really good position 3 years from now when it actually comes time to want to sell.
Yeah.
So that could be great. Or if, you know, sometimes I was too small when we first started, so that option wasn't available to me. So I remember I talked to like their M&A advisors, you know, people who do this for them. The other thing that's great is every industry is different,
Yep.
and what the dynamics are and what companies are looking for is different. So finding people that are in your space who have sold their companies, especially if it's in the last few years, is amazing because they just went through it. They know what things people dug into. What are the metrics they cared about, right?
Yep.
What's trendy? Because certain things, like for us, payment processing revenue is super trendy for us. So if we could, you know, tap into that trend,
Right.
you
Yep.
know, it was, I don't know. We just kind of went everywhere we could to learn.
Got it. You know, one of the recurring themes in this podcast, we talk about employee retention, employee engagement. For holding on to your best employees, what did you find were the best methods to improve employee engagement, and like what signals did you look at to determine like how engaged your employee base was?
Yeah, we looked at things like it was a lot. There wasn't a whole lot quantitative. I mean, we had an employee satisfaction score surveys we do periodically. A lot of it was qualitative. Like we would ask, you know, always ask for feedback. How are we doing? How are you feeling? You know, like sit down one-on-one, you know, try to just get input everywhere we could,
Yeah.
you know, to do that. But ultimately we just looked at what's life like for people on a day-to-day basis. What are they telling us? You know, where
Yeah.
are the problems? What's getting in their way? Because at the end of the day, people want to, you know, they want to be able to get their job done and not have a lot of friction or, you know, or things getting in their way.
Yeah.
They want to work with people they trust and respect. They want to be respected and have their voice heard. They want, you know, there's certain things that everybody's different, but there's certain things that generally people want. So we just identify which one of those, based on what people are telling us, are we not doing a great job at,
Yep.
you know? And then we just each quarter pick one thing and just get a little bit better at that.
Yeah.
Every single quarter.
Yeah.
We have a question we asked during the interview process, and it's what's your why?
Yeah.
And I believe people get up every day and go to work for themselves. They don't go to work for recruitability or school admin, Thornton Lamar. And the why is what gets them up every day and, you know, gets them to work. And I've heard so many different answers over the years, right?
Yeah.
But I've heard some really powerful ones. And my answer is always, let's focus on that, right? If we as a company can help you get there, then we're all going to win, right? So, and if I had a girl tell me that she wants to open up centers for bruised and battered women all over the world, and because I found out later she grew up in that environment, and I said, you know what? I don't know that I can think of a better why. Let's focus on that. How can we help you get that? Right? Mm-hmm. And that it's amazing how selfishly that helps with retention, but also it is a focus on them.
Mm-hmm.
and they want that, right? They need that.
Yeah.
As employers, we should figure out a way. Retention becomes easy if we can figure out a way to focus on that.
Yeah. Well, it shows that it's not just a transactional relationship. Like, you care on a personal level, not just a professional level. And I think in the worst work environments, the most toxic environments I've worked in have been, it's always felt transactional.
Yeah.
And, you know, you feel replaceable. And so if you can connect on the personal level, and, you know, that can go a long, long way.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of big companies that have figured it out, because it gets harder as you get bigger, right, to be able to do that. But it's, but you know, I think the realization that I had is when, and I tell people this, you're going to spend more time over your lifetime. You're going to spend more time with your work family than you do with your real family. Mm-hmm. And so why not work somewhere that you enjoy the people you're around, that you enjoy what you're doing, and that you can make a career out of. And, you know, I get home at 6:30, and my kids go to bed at 8:30, right? I get 2 hours with my kids every day, but I get 8 hours with the people I work with.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Over many decades, think about those the hours at work. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Any lessons learned? Anything like, you know, we always, Nate and I go way back, and we always talk about how, you know, failing forward, and you know, what we can learn from, obviously, the debrief. Let's call this the debrief. But any lessons learned, anything that if you could do it all again, you would do differently, or, you know, did it all just flow smoothly?
Yeah, no, it was smooth. It was easy.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
All right.
No, I got
That's
no.
great.
There's many lessons
Stay
learned.
tuned for Nate's book.
Yeah.
How to make it easy by Nate. No, I the biggest one, it was probably what I was talking about earlier, of just getting better at delegating and sort of recognizing that makes the job more meaningful, in addition to helping you scale.
Yeah.
And I think trusting my intuition was another one that took me a while to become really comfortable with it, because I'm just built, like, I want to look at data. I want to understand the numbers behind things, and
Yep.
you know, over time you make enough decisions, you see enough situations that you start to develop an instinct, and just sort of being willing to roll with my instinct. You know, if we don't have the information we need, you know, just move forward. I think that's another big one as well. I mean, those are, for me, kind of just as a person, as a leader.
The ones that stick out.
The ones that stick out, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got another. I like your "What's your why?" though. I'm gonna have to remember that one.
Yeah, and just to be fair, in case he's listening, I stole that from Jeff Hoffman, the CEO and founder of Priceline.
Okay.
Okay.
That was his
thing.
Jeff
that
Hoffman.
he did.
Yeah.
So when you use it, you have to credit Nat and then credit
Yes.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Two other.
I'd love for you to credit me, but then I gotta drop the credit somewhere. But he said that, I heard him speak, and he said that's a question that he asks everybody. And as soon as he said that, you know, we always ask things around that, but now that's the most important question that I ask, and in the culture interview is that.
Yeah.
And I also want to hear how superficial their answer might be, right? I want to know. You know, Nate, you know this. I'm a big fan of vulnerability. I want to see how vulnerable can somebody get in an interview, right?
Yeah.
How personal do they want to get in an interview? It tells me a lot about, you know, who they're going to be.
Yeah, and the interview is the most guard up, put out your best, you know, version of yourself. Try to make that's the ultimate, you know.
Yep.
Give a certain version of yourself.
And the what's your
It's
why
polished.
question, sort of, it does strip it down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
It takes it right to see how people respond to it, and what is, you know, how vulnerable and honest do they want to be with their answer,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
It goes a long way.
Yeah.
What like coping mechanisms did you develop during like some of the lowest points of school admin? Because, you know, every company has those low points, and, you know, everyone deals with that sort of anxiety and stress a little bit differently.
Yeah, actually, one part of it was, I'm in a group, I referenced it earlier, called Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, and you meet with fellow, you know, people who run businesses and are in a similar, because it's not easy. It can be lonely, you know, it can be tough, really tough sometimes. So
Sure.
It's a group of people that just super high trust, you know, everything's confidential, and you can just, and we've all been through the same stuff. It doesn't matter what industry, whatever. So having a peer group of some sort, and I've had individual peer groups just with friends, that were like just people to bounce ideas off of. Like that is huge.
Yeah.
It's just a way to get perspective.
Sure.
It can be hard if you don't have others around you in that same situation.
Yep.
I also focus, for me, health is the big thing, like exercise, eating healthy, not drinking too much, like those types of things, like if I can do those consistently, huge impact on my just sort of mental well-being. When I'm in there and I'm dealing with something super stressful, I'm just a lot more resilient if I'm getting my exercise every day. And so for me, that's the big thing. It's just, and I go through, phases where it's doing great, and then phases where it's just like the debauchery, right? Like it's just I'm not, and then but usually it's tended more towards maintaining health, and then that's a big thing.
Yeah, if I'm in a really pissy mood, first thing I'll ask myself, when's the last time I played pickup basketball? And typically it's been a while, and that's my stress relief, right? So and then Tony, one of the other co-founders of Third Lamar, he's an accomplished jiu-jitsu athlete.
Yeah.
If he hasn't trained jiu-jitsu in a few days or longer, like I can tell. I'll ask him, and he's like, it's been a little bit, So it's like knowing those things is kind of funny.
Yeah, it's we were. I was talking about this with a couple buddies of mine that I go mountain biking with, and it's the type of thing where, when you're out there and you're navigating all these features, and you're not thinking about anything else.
Mm-hmm.
You're just 100% involved in that, and because. I'm sure all of us probably have this to different degrees of your brain's probably always going on some problem or some challenge. Just having something that clears your head that's physical like that, like I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
Do you still play pickup basketball?
Yeah. Ramsey Park, 9 a.m. on Sundays.
Yeah.
And I've heard about a few other games. I just haven't had time. But if I could play 4 times a week, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my body might not agree, but...
I feel it the next day. I love playing. I feel it the next day. I've only played once since all the gyms opened back up.
Yeah. It's
service.
fun. And I don't really play with people in like their early 20s who treat it like Game 7 of the NBA Finals. So, if you have an open layup, no one's going to like challenge you.
The key these days is to give 75% on the court. If somebody's giving 100%, I'm not going to play with you.
It's not worth the risk.
No, it's not. Don't give me your best effort. Give me just enough to not get injured.
Well, you'll get sucked into that, Nad.
Yeah.
Into the competition.
That's right. But that's a great question, Nick. I know, Nate, you do a big mountain biking trip or a couple every year, right?
Yeah. At least one we'll do every year. Yeah.
Where do you guys typically go?
So we were going to Utah for a long time, to Moab, and riding around there. There's some incredible trails out there. Then we started doing Colorado, and we went to a winter park, which they call it Trestle during the summer, but you take your bike up on a lift, and it's downhill mountain biking, which is a lot of fun.
I would like that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's you're playing with fire every time, a little bit. But and then this last time we went into Colorado, just down by Salida, and took a bunch of shuttle rides where you drive a pickup truck up, drop everybody off, you ride down, leave another car at the bottom, and
Oh, that's cool.
It's awesome because you can just ride all day and mostly descent. And we're from Texas. We don't bike well at 12,000 feet. We don't have that endurance. So
the lung capacity.
Yeah. You might not agree with this, but we've known each other a long time. You've always been good at. I feel you've always been good at, focusing on yourself, doing these types of things, and being able to reset. Because I think as anybody in the workforce, whether you're an employer or on a team, the importance of just being able to reset yourself. I think we lose that a lot.
Yeah.
And, I know you've been a workaholic over the years, but being able to take time for yourself is a great way to just get refocused.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they call it 360 entrepreneur, right? Personal, business, and family. And if you look at that in a flywheel, when everything is at its peak, what gets sacrificed first? Personal.
Yep.
You're not going to spend less time with your kids.
Yep.
You're not going to spend less time on your business. So the one that takes the hit first is always personal. When you can actually make a case, might be tough to sell to your spouse, but you can make a case that the personal is the most important
Yep.
It's like putting the oxygen mask on first, right? It's the most important before you can focus on the rest.
Yeah. The Google CEO had a good analogy recently. He was like, everyone in life has, I think he said 4 balls. It could be 5. He said, you got your health, you got your family, you got your friends, you got your work. He said, 3 of those balls are made out of rubber, 1's made out of glass. He says, work is the one that's made out of glass. Your family is the one made out of glass. The other ones, you might drop them from time to time, they'll bounce back. But if you drop the family one, it's made out of glass, it cracks. And I might have butchered that analogy, but yeah, I think you guys understand the spirit of it.
Yeah.
And it's good to keep in mind, right? You can
That's a great analogy.
you're going to drop the ball from time to time, but know which ones are going to bounce back and which ones won't.
Yeah.
That's great.
But we should probably wrap up soon. But last question before we wrap is, like, what's next for you? What do you got going on now, and what do you see the future work-wise for you?
You know, I don't know. Right now what I'm focused on. So long term, I'm not sure. You know when I'm gonna be jumping into the next thing 100%. In the meantime, I'm working with, been advising some companies, both informally and formally, and just taking on some consulting, helping with due diligence on some deals, and but really just learning about new spaces, new areas, and meeting people at this point.
Nice.
And then at some point, I'm really trying to resist, as like we just talked about it now. Like I have a tendency to go 150% into whatever the thing is, all in. And so I'm just really trying to resist going all in too soon,
Yep.
you know, and give some space to, try some different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spend time with those 4 kids.
That's right. Hang with the family.
right.
Yeah, we had this summer, like was amazing. It was the first time I'd really been able to disconnect because just
Yeah.
I didn't have a business to run.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well, I'm glad you have that time to join podcasts like this.
That's right.
Wait, real quick, this is a really important question. When you guys travel, do you get your whole row of seats together as a family, or being a family of 6, or do you split like 3 and 3, or 2, 2, 2?
Yeah, we do 3 and 3. 3 and 3, like one right in front of the other. And the reason is that way when my kids are like kicking the seat or like they're leaning their seat way too far back, they're just messing
They're
with
only
us.
bugging one.
They're bugging
one
us.
person.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Smart.
Powerful.
Trying to minimize the damage, basically.
We
That's our
used to, when
strategy.
we used to travel when our kids were super young, we would, this is my wife's idea, we would leave Snickers bars on the seats
Genius.
in front of us and the seats behind us in advance of the flight even taking off. And our kids could be perfect on the plane, and or they could cry the whole time. Who knows, right? They're 6 months old.
Yeah.
But she would apologize in advance by leaving candy for the people in front and behind.
Oh, that's nice.
So they were less averse to, giving you that evil
eye.
eye.
Yeah, that's right.
complaining, so.
Good
Just
person.
soften the evil eye a little
Yeah,
bit.
I mean, if you guys take anything away from that podcast,
That's
this
it.
podcast.
Just do that. Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, this is great. Appreciate you coming on.